You don't know me, and you never will, as the gore in your head begins to braid with the rubble underneath us. I lay next to you. My transformation is nearly complete. My eyes have not yet matched your vision, slightly impaired in the left eye to where the leaves that hanging off the autumn trees blur with the sun. We both fell. If you think about it, bending neurons are still a spark. No one will realize you've been decaying here until a few hours from now. I want to tell you that I love you. You'll never know how long I've been watching you, how it breaks me to see your body dissolving. I am a child of God. I was a child of God. I once had wings that stretched between the tops of the skyline. I once had a halo to illuminate the streets for God's word. When we rose from the dandelions and the dirt, He embraced us. But He would never show us love again, for He is a coward, drunk on His own selfish gospels written by disciples who will never meet Him. I was a watcher. I would sit at the desk surrounded by clouds, with an endless window of sunset observing followers. Any signs that kept me from their pastors, their priests, their brothers and sisters, their daughters and sons. I would see the furrowing of brows and clenching of fists in hesitation. I would see every drop of sweat across sheets. I would see every bruise left from skin-on-skin contact. Every tear the other would allow to seep into the cuts and bruises. I would be the one to send them to endless void or into paradise. But paradise gets boring after a while. Conflicts is what drives humans, I guess. If there's no challenge, humans sink. The walls of glass and granite in their heads crumble. It's awful to see. It turns into a sort of mania. You can see it in their eyes, clawing at their skin enough to crack it and let the blood splash against white marble, pulling out their hair in clumps and crying until there are no more tears to be produced. The handlers would take those like that away. You would never see them again. I assume they were taken to drift into the silence of abyss for eternity, charmed by their own madness. Are you scared? Don't be. Wherever you're going is much better than the white columns and empty songs of heaven. Anything is, even abyss. I've observed so many people over many centuries. Kings, queens, martyrs, peasants, servants, heathens. The amount of knowledge I have on sprawling individuals could rebuild the Library of Alexandria. Fascinating, isn't it? But the way I looked at it all changed with you. Your name was Natasha. I thought it was beautiful. You wanted to be a harpist. Your father bought you a harp when you were 7. Before then, the only item in your bedroom were a lamp and an empty dollhouse, a mattress, and a holy book. I should have found that despicable the first time I saw it. Only years later did I realize your blankets were sometimes too thin for the cold. Your family wanted you homeschooled, but you insisted on making new friends. You were the first to greet other children on the playground. With a gap in your teeth and your then brown hair shape at odd angles, because your mother's hands were not as stable as they once were. You often had scrapes on your pale skin from running through grass or sliding across dirt and rumble. Up until the age of 10, you were a devout to God. Sermons brought you to your knees and your eyes leaking without any sound to capture them. Your best friend, who showed you the truth, is doing fine, by the way. I know you haven't spoken to her since she left for college. She teaches first grade now in a small town. She still braids her hair the way you taught her and secures it to wrap around her skull. She hadn't forgotten about you, and instead, she thinks you're the one who did. I replicated your voice, down to the way you sometimes roll your R's and to let a hiccup in your laugh. Perhaps I'll give her a call. Keep up a facade. She won't be able to tell you the difference, I'm sure. We're only to watch believers. By the age of 12, any drop of praise for a Lord who would never have seen your face was gone. I was asked to move on. I watched thousands a day, not just you. The mind of an angel dressed in silk with eyes across translucent skin is much more complicated than a human being could understand. But you were my favorite. I couldn't let you go. Someone with such light threatening to be snuffed out by everyone around was so precious. Angels aren't supposed to feel. You continue to play the harp. You fell in love with the old book on vampires and monsters and artists. I read them with you, sometimes beside you. Guardian angels sit out sight to learn things that their own father wouldn't. There's a quote that stuck with me from when we read Dorian Gray. Some things are more precious because they don't last long. You grew into leather jackets and skirts above the knees. At 15, you started painting women with blood down their noses, sweat clinging to their hair, an axe above their head, not welded by their own hands. You pretended to go to church with friends instead of your family. It was an obvious lie, but your family believed you. I think they just didn't want to try convincing you again. So they tried subliminally. Your mother always wore a silver cross on her neck and hosted studies at her home. You would hole yourself up in your room, painting or playing games by yourself. The only reason you were really social was to get out of the house. Not that your parents hated you, they loved you. You know, when you look at your father, silent as ever, a crease in his brow and a narrowing of his eyes that just tells you he's disappointed. You couldn't bear it either, could I? On Sunday morning, you and your friends would ride your bikes through your small suburban town. For Christmas once a year, you asked for one with a basket. Yours was a soft baby blue, and you'd ride it from your house on a quiet street to the park by the convenience store. There was a cemetery across the street belonging to a meeting house no one ever visited. But after you and your friends would part ways and you would make the trip home, you'd walk between the graves. Sometimes you would sit in the grass to get to know the residents of the dirt. The dead don't get the love they deserve. Who knows where they ended up? School was easy for you. You, more so, would get into this mindset of not doing anything when you were stressed. So you wouldn't turn in your work on time, or you'd be up until 4 a.m. to finish it. You didn't know what to do when it came to applying to college, So you became a fine art student. You continued painting. Your father was against it. Who wants art these days? Your mother was kinder. She'd give you a prayer candle when you left for the city. You never lit it. Your friends called you Nat. You always had paint under your fingertips, pen behind your ear. You would go to coffee at the same spot. You would always get an iced caramel frappe, even if it was below 0 outside. I have your taste buds. I'll love it just as much as you did. There was a church on your walk home to your dorm. It's a weird spot, stitched in a large city among small taco shops and pharmacies. Sometimes you would stop to admire it, promise yourself you'd paint it. You never did. I'd sometimes watch you from the spires as you take your phone out and take photographs of the stone against the sunset. The digital medium could never pick up the essence of an angel, but I was there. While you stood in pretty scarves and hats and chokers with spikes to ward off men who stared at you with hungry eyes wanting to dig into your flesh. You visited art museums and stared at how beautiful the women were painted. They remind you of your first crush, an actress in a movie about 2 women isolated on an island. You loved the way she smiled, how her eyelashes would sway away from the nose. You never found love with another person. Your love was with your art. And it drove you to your downfall. For the first time in your life, with the remainder of hair dye on your hands, with lip gloss stains on your teeth, you were in love with yourself. You were Natasha, the painter of your own horrors. You were featured in advertisements for the school's art department. You were excelling in class and you were well loved. I had all my ears to listen. No one ever thought a single bad thing about you. If anything, they were jealous. But you still felt alone. The canvas was more of a fragmented mirror, and paint strokes were bloody nails clawing into the wall. When you started painting, you wouldn't remember how you did it. You would come back to reality with clumps of your hair torn out and saliva dripping from your mouth. The piece would be done. At points, you wouldn't recognize reality anymore. When you tried playing the harp, like you did as a child, your hands shook unstable like your mother's. You cut your fingers and strings and threw the harp against your bedroom door. You never fixed the door. You would sit on the subway with nowhere to go for hours, staring at the blackness through the windows. I cannot pray, but I tried. I hope that this would pass. I hope that you can get treatment, even if temporarily, but I was foolish. Some things cannot be fixed. When you have the expectations of the world on your shoulders, you feel like you can't ask anyone for help. And even showing that you need it is a weakness. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to someone, tears in your eyes, telling them that you need assistance. But that's in the past. A week ago, you stopped going to class. Your friends would call you. You blocked everyone but your mother. You visited a museum you loved, staring at the women by a cliffside, shielded by the sun with parasol. You broke down crying in the middle of a gallery. Another patron was kind enough to give you tissue and escort you to the exit. You sat on the steps to the museum for 3 hours. After that, doing nothing but staring. 5 days ago, you sold all of your paintings or threw them out. You donated the money to arts programs in schools across the state or to artistic youth. A pretty girl asked you why you were selling your livelihood. You smiled and said it was to make room for new ideas. It was an obvious lie, but she just nodded and bought a small canvas piece of a woman cutting her daughter's hair. 3 days ago, you stopped eating. You lived on energy drinks that only made you paranoia worse. It was a huge art, like the one in Paris, at a park downtown. Stood underneath it and counted every rivet and circle carved by a man. Took you hours. A fellow student asked if you were okay. You continue mumbling. She apologized and walked past you. Today you called your mother and it immediately took voicemail. You told her you loved her, that you missed the smell of the cabbage rolls she would prepare on Friday nights, that you missed watching movies with her on the couch with milk and cookies while your father was away, that your hands shook like hers. You could barely pick up a brush, that the gap in your memory were only getting worse. You couldn't remember the faces of your childhood friends. They became black silhouettes with generic names in your memories. 30 minutes ago, passed by a store while walking to the building above us. You stared at a dress that reminded you of your harp days. It was just above the knees. Sleeves and the top half were black, while the rest was white. You did the finger motion of stringing along to a song your mother loved. I replicated the dress with the rest of my energy. Isn't it pretty? You've got to wear it yourself. For 20 minutes on top of the building overlooking the city, you watch the cars and the lights. Everything looks so small when you're so high above, doesn't it? I heard a rumor in my time as an angel that a sibling of mine, many years ago, sacrificed their angelhood, their holiness, to alter the course of a life. You see, time and day you're to die is planned out. The keepers know. They did not tell us, but you can feel it. A ruffle in the feathers of your wings, the eyes becoming itchy. My sisters and brothers were already suspicious of me. I asked what I can do 3 days before you ended up here, with your brains under your head and merging with stone. I asked about the fallen sibling. Granted, many of us had fallen for our own reasons. We become corrupt. We learn emotion. We learn that the lives in which we see are important. Each and every one of them were watching this whole time. And we have this power. We cannot stop this. I tried ripping my own halo off. The keepers grabbed me by my arms and dragged me to meet my father, the Lord, the Savior, whatever the fuck people call him. He held me by every limb and made me look at him with all 1,000 of my eyes. He didn't know my name. I was that forgetful to him. He asked me what I had done to be in front of him, my father, my provider of not life, my father who blessed my dandelion seed and carried me to my position, my father who was bound to serve until the human race died, forced to find new species to prey on. I told him you were going to die soon. He asked why I cared. I had seen millions die, hadn't I? Of course I had. But you weren't meant for this. The keepers had to be wrong about when you were to die. That some power had to possess you and drive you mad. I started crying. Do you know what an angel's tears look like? Imagine the world's smoothest liquid gold with the heat of the hottest stars in the galaxy. Imagine 1,000 eyes weeping for you to stay. The tear didn't even hit the ground before I started falling. When I was falling, I was naked, a human body with only a pair of eyes and my 4 limbs. They let you keep the wings on your head as a reminder of what you once were, of your shame. There are long scars along my back where my wings once were. I can feel them. I don't ever want to see them. I was falling right alongside you. You were still conscious. I think you were until the whole way down. Because we locked eyes. Mine a patch black, yours a blue velvet. Despite all the years watching you, I don't know what emotion you were feeling with the wind in your hair and heaviness in your heart. Perhaps it was one I had never seen. Content. And that's how we got here. When a fallen angel hits the ground, they take the form of the person they came across, dead or living. Pretty novel that I got you, huh? What am I saying? I've been sitting here, laying with the dead on broken concrete for what feels like hours. I don't want to leave you. I wish I got to know you better. Not as a watcher, but as a friend. I'll take your name and your face, but I cannot be you. I cannot go back to your friends, to your family, to your old life. I don't know what I'll do. The problem with fallen angels is that they live forever. They're bugs in a code that never seem to fade away, no matter how many alterations to that reality you make. We don't need sleep. We don't need to eat. But I've heard we do anyways. Seem human to those around us. Some hide their wings under their hats. Some cut them off. But they make it. In alternate worlds, I would be furious with my father. I think he was doing this as a test. I'd kill for him. Rumors circulated that fallen angels would torture every sin out of a sinner to let them back into heaven. But it never worked. I'm not upset. At least I'm still numb from the fall and from the fact that you're just rotting here. Your cells are dying. If a dog doesn't find you and alert its owner in a few hours, you'll start to smell. I hope someone finds you. You wanted your body burned and your ashes buried with a tree to help it grow in a melting world. I'll come visit that tree, a doppelganger visiting its original body. Would you mind if I read you stories? The ones you used to like? I should go. I stand up and dust myself off. No scrapes or bruises infect my pale skin this time. I give you one last look before I go. I didn't want the last image in my head to be of your mangled, bloody. I give you one last look before I go. I didn't want the last image in my head to be of your mangled, blood-covered husk. The city air feels crisp. The weather is just right. The lights and sounds are bright and blaring outside the alley. Good night, Natasha. And so I step into the world looking for shelter for the night.